Well, many things. Many things. Usually it's relationships or situations in life, whether they're mine or somebody else's. I write mostly about relationships, so whether they're romantic or not. And a lot of the time, other musicians inspire me a lot. So if I see a really great show, I immediately want to go try to write a song or have an inspiration for lyrics or a tune or a melody. So yeah, I would say those are the two things, just life in general and relationships, and then seeing other people's music. I guess it sort of goes in waves as I change what I'm listening to. So right now I'm really into Frightened Rabbit, which is sort of like an indie rock band from Scotland. But I'm also into, Rose Cousins and Laurie McKenna, and it really actually varies. But if you're listening to good music, particularly I think a live show is what can really inspire me. But in the past I've done stuff like, I remember I was listening to an Edie Carey song, and there is an intro in her song that's just instruments in the beginning, and I thought, oh, that would be neat. And I started to sort of sing a melody over it, and then I started to write something based on the chord progression she was using at the beginning of that. So that was kind of a neat thing I hadn't done before. My very first song, I cannot remember what it was called, but it was something about wanting to have a boyfriend or something like that. I think, how I started playing guitar is that I had played classical piano for a really long time, and then I quit because my piano teacher moved away and I didn't like my new teacher, and I was like, I don't need to go to piano lessons anymore. I was like 14 or 15, and I was in the concert band anyways, and then I just missed playing piano so much. I thought, oh well, maybe I'll pick up the guitar because my mom had one and she knew how to play a little bit, and I just bought a chord book and I found some really simple songs, and away I went, and I taught myself how to play guitar. And then at the same time I was writing in my diary, and as teenage girls sometimes do, and like poems or just ideas or just journaling, and I thought, oh well, maybe I'll put those two things together. I don't think there was any lightning bolt moment when I was like, I must write a song, but I was like, oh, let's put these things together. And so it was that one song, I think it was 15 or 16, and then I didn't really write anything until I was probably about 18, and then I started to write quite a bit more. It varies. It used to be, a lot of people ask lyrics first or music first or melody first, and I've started with all those different things first before in different songs. So sometimes I'll be kind of just humming a tune in my head, and then I'll try to capture that melody, usually on my iPhone or something like that. Or I'll be playing guitar and find an interesting progression, and then I'll just start throwing a melody over it. And then there's other times where I'm literally writing in a journal or in a notebook that I use just to get lyric ideas, and have a lyrical idea. Like one of my songs, Endless Love, I wrote the whole thing, I think I was in like industrial psychology class at university or something, and I was like, oh, and I just started to write, and I wrote pretty much the whole song lyrically. So it really depends, but I think it more starts with that inspirational moment. I find it difficult and a challenge, as I'm sure other artists do, to just bring it out of nowhere. So I like having a bit of a spark to go, to kind of throw me into that level, into that mode. And I think as you practice more and more at it, it becomes easier to just put yourself into that mode instead of needing to be inspired to be put in that mode. But I still work on that too. Lately, less, but more things come out of it, if that makes sense. I think when I was younger, I had a lot of things to say all the time, and things I needed to express about me or about my situation or whatever was happening to me at the time. Now it's more like I choose to write. I always will, I think, write songs, but I think there's less things to complain about. And I think as you get older, it's an interesting challenge of you've written in terms of what I write, because a lot of it is about me or relating to my life. Like, you kind of take up a lot of topics, and then you're working from whatever point in time where you've written your first album to what's happened in the next year or two. And sometimes you go back, but it's an interesting search for what do you want to say. And I'm at the point in just musically and what I'm writing to say, what do I really want to talk about? Is there, like, do I want to express myself, just something that I'm feeling, or do I want to make a commentary on something, or do I want to send a message to somebody about whatever, positivity or whatever it might be? So yes, I do write, and I think I try to write on a regular basis. I mean, you know, once a week to be able to sit down and kind of like try to do something, and even if it's terrible. I've written a lot of terrible stuff lately. And I recently, I guess, sort of broke a bit of a writer's block that I'd had before, and I pumped out a couple songs. I thought, oh my God, finally. So I think there's an ebb and flow to it, definitely. I'm sure the artists find that too, that there's sometimes you've hit the jackpot in the gold mine and just stuff is coming out all the time. And then other times when you're like, did I ever write a song? Was that one? Were they even good? So I think there's not always a set way to do it. You just kind of try things until you figure out what's right for you. Oh, my writer's block trick that worked this time was I stopped trying to force it, because I was just getting frustrated of like the things I was trying to write. And I'm like, oh, I've written this before, this sounds ridiculous, or I don't like it anymore. And I thought, you know what, like, what am I doing to inspire my writing right now? And I didn't think I was doing enough. So I took a lot of the year, like a portion, probably 5 or 6 months, of just experiencing as much art as I could. So whether it was music or drama or dance, like visual art, like if you look at my Facebook, you can see everything that I went to, you know, like whether it was a play or a dance piece, like, and just to try to like turn the creative side of my brain on a little bit more. And I think that helped. But I also think for me personally, to be able to bounce off ideas off another writer, which I never used to do almost ever. Like, I think I've co-written like 2 songs or 3 songs, but it really helped to send it out to somebody, like somebody you would trust and whose abilities you value, and as a songwriter, and as usually as a friend, to be like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Or like, what do you think? And it doesn't even have to be, they don't even have to write you 10 pages of notes on it, but sometimes it can help just to put it out there a little bit, to be able to go, oh no, this is not the way I want it to be, or oh, it could work on a little bit and it could be really good. So those are the 2 things, like filling my life with, the idea was to fill myself with so much art that it would just come out of me. Sort of like the overflow system. And then also like the idea of co-write or some sort of jam or something to get ideas going. More when it, like, first times, like a lot of the stuff I write myself, but it's nice to have like a little bit of a community of people who like the way you write and like your songwriting, and whose songwriting you like as well. I feel like it's like a safe place to throw out ideas, and I think it helps me to kind of rise to a greater occasion and go like, well, okay, if I'm going to show John Worthannon this song, better be kind of good. Like I like you kind of pull yourself to a different level, I find, like, and it's the performative moment that a lot of artists have, I think, when they have the song in their living room or basement or whatever it is, and then they actually perform it. There's something that happens in that moment that once it becomes part of an audience, you're like, oh, and I think after a while, intrinsically, this song is bombing, or the song is brilliant, and sometimes somewhere in between. I think obviously there's many things, that it's memorable and that it resonates with your audience. I know there's a lot of artists who write songs that it doesn't necessarily have to be for somebody else. It's for themselves. But for me, what I think is a great song is usually there's something memorable about it. Like either you attach the lyrics, or you attach to the melody, or you attach to the arrangement. And obviously when you have all those different elements working together in a positive manner, you have a super awesome song. But I think there's a lot of really great songs that don't get the kind of exposure that some of the more mainstream music does. And I also think that there's a lot of mainstream music that is really great songwriting. So it's sort of both sides. But it's called Something New. And it was one of the songs that broke my writer's block. So it came about because of a friend. A friend and I were having a conversation on texting, and some of the things he said, I thought, oh, that's a really great way to say that. And so he had a couple lines, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I kind of turned it into a story, a little bit about not only just having something new between a man and woman in a relationship, but also all new things in your life too. I was lost in a compromise, not willing to take on either side. When I felt the dull in my heart, I had to change.